Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling that something was off? No one said anything rude. No one raised their voice. Everything sounded perfectly normal. Yet somehow you knew. Maybe someone smiled without meaning it. Maybe they agreed too quickly. Maybe their words said one thing, but something deeper told you another story. The strange part is that you couldn't explain why. The human brain is constantly reading thousands of tiny signals without asking for permission. While you focus on the words people speak, your subconscious is quietly analyzing facial expressions, body posture, tone of voice, pauses, eye movements, and dozens of other details. Most people never realize this is happening. The people who understand these hidden patterns don't possess magical intuition. They simply notice what everyone else overlooks. And once you begin seeing these invisible behaviors, you'll never look at people the same way again. Let's begin with one of the most misunderstood truths about human behavior. Imagine meeting someone for the first time. You ask simple questions. What do you do? Where are you from? Everything sounds polite. Everything sounds friendly. But beneath every sentence, another conversation is taking place. Notice how people sit. Notice how quickly they relax. Notice whether they lean toward you or subtly pull away. Comfort is one of the most honest emotions humans express because it's incredibly difficult to fake for long. Someone may tell you they're happy to meet you, yet their shoulders remain tense. Their feet point toward the nearest exit. The smile disappears the moment you stop looking. Their words are positive. The body is telling another story. Researchers have long observed that genuine comfort causes the body to become more open. Hands become visible. Movements become smoother. Breathing slows. People naturally mirror each other's posture without realizing it. On the other hand, discomfort creates invisible barriers. Crossed arms, forced laughter, short answers, frequent glances around the room. These aren't proof that someone dislikes you. They may simply feel nervous, tired, overwhelmed, or distracted. That's why emotionally intelligent people avoid jumping to conclusions. Instead of asking, "What does this behavior mean?" they ask, "What might this person be feeling?" That small difference changes everything, because behavior always has a reason, even when we don't understand it yet. The next time you meet someone, spend less energy judging their words. Pay attention to how relaxed they become over time. Comfort grows naturally. Pretending eventually becomes exhausting. Think about the last time someone shared a difficult problem with you. Your first instinct was probably to help. Maybe you offered solutions. Maybe you tried to fix everything. Maybe you immediately said, "You should." But something unexpected happened. The conversation didn't improve. In fact, the other person seemed even more frustrated. Why? Because many conversations are not requests for solutions. They're requests for connection. When people experience stress, loneliness, disappointment, or grief, their emotional brain often needs validation before it can process logic. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack. Someone walks over and explains how backpacks work. Technically useful, practically unhelpful. What you really wanted was someone to help carry the weight. Human beings are remarkably resilient. Most people eventually find their own answers. What they struggle to find is someone who genuinely listens without rushing to speak. That's why simple phrases can have incredible power. "That sounds difficult. I understand why you'd feel that way. I'm glad you told me." These aren't magical words. They simply communicate one important message. You're not alone. Ironically, people who feel understood often become much more open to advice afterward, because trust always comes before influence. If you want stronger friendships, better relationships, or more meaningful conversations, resist the urge to solve every problem immediately. Sometimes your greatest gift isn't wisdom, it's presence. Have you ever noticed how one person's mood can change an entire room? A cheerful coworker arrives on Monday morning. Within minutes, everyone seems more relaxed. Or perhaps someone enters angry after a stressful commute. Without saying much, the atmosphere suddenly feels heavier. This isn't imagination. Humans are deeply social creatures. Our brains constantly observe the emotional state of those around us. Scientists sometimes describe this as emotional contagion. emotions spread surprisingly fast. Not because people choose them consciously, but because the brain is built to synchronize with others. Watch a group of close friends eating dinner. They often laugh together, lean forward together, pause together. Even their speaking rhythm begins to match. None of this is planned. It's automatic. This hidden synchronization helps humans build trust and cooperation, but it also explains why negative environments can drain us without obvious reasons. Spend enough time around constant criticism, complaining, fear, or hostility, and eventually your own thoughts begin to change. The opposite is also true. One calm person can quietly reduce tension in an entire group. Notice experienced teachers, great leaders, kind nurses, patient parents. They rarely control situations by speaking louder. Instead, they regulate their own emotions first. Calm becomes contagious. Confidence becomes contagious. Kindness becomes contagious. This doesn't mean you should fake happiness. It means becoming aware that your emotional state influences people far more than your words alone. The energy you consistently bring into a room often becomes the energy that room reflects back to you. So far, we've uncovered 3 invisible behaviors that quietly shape nearly every human interaction. But the next ones become even more surprising. Why do people remember criticism far longer than compliments? Why do strangers often reveal their deepest secrets to someone they've just met? And why do people sometimes say yes when every part of them actually means no? Many people believe that making a great first impression means saying the perfect words. In reality, the words often come later. Long before someone remembers what you said, they have already noticed how you said it. Your brain constantly reads nonverbal information. It's almost like listening to 2 conversations at once. One spoken aloud, and one communicated silently through posture, movement, facial expressions, and tone of voice. This doesn't mean you should overthink every gesture. In fact, trying too hard often makes people appear less natural. The goal isn't perfection. It's authenticity. People are remarkably good at sensing when someone's behavior feels genuine. We may not consciously identify why, but our brains pick up subtle patterns. That's why the most memorable first impressions usually don't come from people trying to impress everyone. They come from people who seem comfortable being themselves. Now, let's explore the 5 invisible signals that shape first impressions more than most people realize. Imagine watching a movie with the sound turned off. You can still tell who is nervous, who is angry, who is excited, who is confident. That's the power of body language. Your posture quietly communicates how you feel about yourself and the people around you. Standing tall doesn't mean pretending to be powerful. It simply shows that you're present and engaged. Likewise, constantly looking at the floor or shrinking your shoulders may unintentionally signal discomfort, even if you're simply shy or tired. One of the simplest habits is to pause before entering a room. Take one slow breath. Relax your shoulders. Lift your head naturally. Walk at a comfortable pace. These tiny adjustments don't change who you are. They simply allow others to see your confidence more clearly. Confidence isn't about taking up the most space. It's about feeling comfortable in the space you're already in. Eye contact is one of the most powerful forms of human communication. It signals attention, respect, interest, trust. But there's an important balance. Too little eye contact can make someone seem distracted or uncertain. Too much can feel uncomfortable or even intimidating. The healthiest conversations flow naturally. People look at each other while listening. They glance away while thinking, then reconnect again. It's a rhythm, not a contest. When you genuinely focus on understanding another person instead of worrying about yourself, eye contact often becomes easier. Curiosity replaces anxiety, and people notice. Think about the last time someone smiled at you sincerely. Chances are you smiled back almost automatically. Human beings naturally mirror each other's emotions. This phenomenon helps us connect with one another. But here's something many people overlook. A genuine smile isn't just about your mouth. It reaches your eyes. It softens your face. It appears naturally when you feel interested, grateful, or happy to see someone. Forced smiles often disappear within seconds because they're created only for appearance. Authentic warmth lasts longer because it's connected to real emotion. You don't have to smile every second. In fact, that can seem unnatural. Instead, focus on being genuinely present. When you enjoy the conversation, your expressions usually take care of themselves. Imagine hearing two people say exactly the same sentence. The first speaks calmly, clearly, and with steady pacing. The second rushes through every word, barely taking a breath. The message is identical. The emotional experience is completely different. Your voice carries far more than information. It communicates confidence, kindness, patience, energy, and emotion. Many people speak too quickly when they're nervous. Ironically, slowing down often makes you appear more confident and helps others understand you more easily. Pauses are not mistakes. They're powerful. They give your words room to breathe. They allow listeners to process what you've said, and they show that you're comfortable enough not to rush. Sometimes, saying less with intention is far more memorable than saying more in a hurry. When people hear that appearance affects first impressions, they often think it means wearing expensive clothes or following every fashion trend. That's not what research suggests. People are generally responding to signs of care, not luxury. Cleanliness, appropriate clothing for the situation, neat grooming, attention to detail. These cues communicate that you respect yourself and the people you're meeting. The exact style matters far less than whether it fits the context. A teacher, a nurse, an entrepreneur, and an artist may all dress differently. What creates a positive impression is not looking identical. It's looking intentional. The goal isn't to impress people with status. It's to remove distractions so your character has the chance to shine. And here's the most encouraging part. None of these 5 signals require you to become a different person. They simply help your authentic qualities become easier for others to notice. But if first impressions rely so heavily on these quick signals, why do so many brilliant, kind, and capable people still get misunderstood? That's exactly what we'll explore next. Here's something that may surprise you. First impressions are powerful, but they are not perfect. In fact, they can be wildly inaccurate. Think about someone you know well today. Now ask yourself this question. Was your very first impression of them completely accurate? For many people, the answer is no. Perhaps the quiet coworker you assumed was unfriendly turned out to be one of the kindest people in the office. Maybe the confident classmate who seemed to have everything figured out was secretly struggling with anxiety. Or perhaps someone who appeared reserved became your closest friend after you took the time to know them. The truth is, first impressions are often based on limited information. They're useful for making quick decisions, but they're not reliable enough to define a person's character. Unfortunately, our brains don't always remember that. Psychologists have identified a fascinating mental shortcut known as the halo effect. It happens when one positive quality influences how we judge everything else about a person. Imagine meeting someone who speaks confidently and smiles warmly. Without realizing it, you may also assume they're intelligent, trustworthy, capable, or even more successful. But confidence alone doesn't guarantee wisdom. The opposite can happen too. Someone who appears nervous during a presentation might be judged as less competent, even if they're the most knowledgeable person in the room. One visible trait begins to color every other judgment. It's like seeing the entire sky through a pair of tinted glasses. The world hasn't changed. Only your perception has. This is why it's so important to slow down before making conclusions about people. A single moment rarely tells the whole story. Just as one positive quality can create overly favorable impressions, one negative detail can unfairly shape how someone is viewed. Psychologists call this the horn effect. Imagine arriving late to an important meeting because of an unexpected accident on the highway. Even if you've been reliable for years, some people may suddenly question your professionalism. Or imagine stumbling over your words during a speech because you're nervous. That one awkward moment may become the only thing some people remember. We all make mistakes. We all have bad days. Yet our minds sometimes allow one imperfect moment to overshadow everything else. Recognizing this bias helps us become more compassionate, not only toward others, but also toward ourselves. One imperfect introduction does not define your future. Modern society often celebrates confidence. Confident speakers are praised. Confident leaders are followed. Confident entrepreneurs attract attention. Confidence certainly has value, but confidence and competence are not the same thing. History is full of people who sounded convincing but were completely wrong. At the same time, many brilliant scientists, engineers, artists, doctors, and innovators have been naturally quiet or humble. Their value wasn't in how loudly they spoke, it was in the quality of their thinking. The challenge is that people often notice confidence first because it's easier to see. Competence usually reveals itself over time. This doesn't mean you should pretend to be confident when you're not. Instead, focus on becoming quietly self-assured. Real confidence doesn't come from trying to appear impressive. It comes from preparation, integrity, and experience. People may initially notice confidence, but over the long run, they remember character. Imagine meeting someone new. Instead of immediately deciding who they are, you become curious. You ask thoughtful questions. You listen without interrupting. You pay attention to their story instead of filling in the blanks with assumptions. Something remarkable begins to happen. The conversation becomes deeper, more genuine, more human. Curiosity is one of the fastest ways to overcome the limitations of first impressions, because every person carries experiences you cannot see. Every smile hides untold stories. Every quiet moment may conceal extraordinary strength. Every confident person has known insecurity. Every successful person has faced failure. And every stranger knows something you don't. The people who build the strongest relationships are rarely the quickest to judge. They're the quickest to understand. In the final part, we'll explore practical, science-backed strategies to create authentic first impressions, recover from bad ones, and build lasting trust. Because while first impressions open the door, it's your actions that determine whether people invite you to stay. By now, you might be wondering, so how do I make a better first impression? The answer may be simpler than you expect. You don't need a perfect smile. You don't need expensive clothes. You don't need to memorize clever conversation starters. And you certainly don't need to pretend to be someone you're not. The strongest first impressions aren't built on perfection. They're built on authenticity. People naturally trust those whose words, expressions, and actions are consistent. When your body language matches your voice, when your smile reflects genuine warmth, when your attention is fully on the person in front of you, people feel it. Authenticity creates comfort, and comfort creates trust. Ironically, the more you focus on making people feel seen instead of trying to make yourself look impressive, the stronger your first impression becomes. Let's look at 5 practical habits you can begin using today. First, be fully present. When someone is speaking, resist the urge to plan your next sentence. Instead, truly listen. People remember how you made them feel far more than the exact words you said. Being fully present is one of the rarest and most valuable gifts you can offer. Second, remember names. A person's name is deeply connected to their identity. When you remember and naturally use someone's name in conversation, it communicates respect and attention. You don't need to repeat it constantly. Simply using it once or twice during a conversation can make the interaction feel more personal. Third, ask meaningful questions. Instead of asking questions out of habit, ask questions because you're genuinely curious. Questions like, what inspired you to do that? What do you enjoy most about your work? How did you get started? These questions invite stories instead of short answers, and stories create connection. Fourth, avoid trying to impress. Many people enter conversations hoping to prove how smart, successful, or interesting they are. Ironically, this often creates distance. Instead, focus on understanding the other person. People are naturally drawn to those who make them feel heard. Finally, be consistent. A great first impression may open a door, but consistency is what keeps it open. Trust isn't built in a single meeting. It's built through repeated actions over time. Showing up, keeping your promises, treating people with respect, being dependable. These qualities leave impressions that last far longer than appearances ever could. What if your first impression wasn't great? Maybe you were nervous. Maybe you said the wrong thing. Maybe you were having one of the worst days of your life. Does that moment define you forever? Fortunately, no. Research on relationships consistently shows that people's opinions can change as they gather more information. Every positive interaction becomes new evidence. Every act of kindness, every honest conversation, every promise you keep, every moment of reliability. These experiences gradually replace the assumptions people formed during those first few seconds. The key is patience. Don't try to erase a bad first impression overnight. Instead, allow your consistent behavior to tell a more complete story. Think of a first impression as the opening page of a book. If the rest of the story is compelling, readers rarely judge the entire book by its first page. Life works much the same way. Years from now, very few people will remember exactly what you wore during your first meeting. They probably won't remember every word you spoke. They may not even remember where you met, but they will remember how they felt around you. Did they feel respected? Did they feel understood? Did they feel encouraged? Did they feel safe enough to be themselves? Those emotional memories often last much longer than facts. In the end, your greatest first impression isn't created by looking perfect. It's created by making another human being feel valued. And that is something anyone can learn. The science of first impressions teaches us two powerful lessons. First, our brains naturally make quick judgments. It's part of being human. But second, and perhaps more importantly, those judgments are only the beginning of the story. Every conversation, every shared experience, every act of kindness, every moment of honesty adds another chapter. So the next time you meet someone new, remember this. Don't focus on being the most impressive person in the room. Focus on being the most genuine. Listen more than you speak. Smile because you're truly happy to connect. Be curious instead of judgmental. And let your character speak louder than your image. Because while first impressions may open the door, your integrity, empathy, and consistency are what keep it open. Thank you for watching. If this video helped you see human connection in a new way, share it with someone who could use this reminder. And the next time you meet a stranger, remember, you may have only a few seconds to create a first impression, but you have a lifetime to reveal who you truly are.